Welcome everyone to the LEC Summer Playoffs. What a season it's been so far, and it seems it was only yesterday when 10 teams embarked on a mission for an LEC title and a spot at the World Championship. But now we are rapidly approaching the zenith of the summer split, and there's only 6 teams left standing, but absolutely everything to play for. First up, coming off of World's Finals and double titles in 2018, Fnatic wanted nothing more than to continue that domination of Europe, but they dramatically fell short in spring. This time around, they've already secured themselves a spot in Athens and are stopping at nothing to get back to the top of Europe and the world stage. But in their way, and frankly in everyone's way for that matter, stand Perks and G2 esports, LEC champions, MSI champions, and perhaps the best team Europe has ever seen. They enter playoffs in first place, and it will take a monumental upset to keep them from the title. It is G2 against everyone, and everyone against G2. But one of their challengers is Schalke 04, a well-oiled machine who made up for a lackluster spring split with a solid run to 4th place. But can Upset and crew prove that last year's finals wasn't a fluke, wasn't a one-off, and can the organization finally make it to Worlds? Now, Vitality, they are the wild card of the playoffs. The team has always played like a bull in a china shop, but the VIT magic has not delivered in 2019 so far, and very few are betting on the Italian Stallion and company this time around. But can they subvert expectations like they've done so many times these past 2 years? Now, there's no doubt at all about who the underdogs of our playoffs are. It is Rogue. They surprised everyone by making it here after ending last place in spring. Now, no one really expects them to reach the second round. But then again, who even expected them to make it here, to make it to playoffs? Finally, Splyce, they start their run against Rogue, but we've heard it all before. Potential, great regular season, bridesmaids, forever third, but this time is different. Could be different. They have the best chance they've had in 3 years to make it to Athens and make it to Worlds, as long as they don't stumble at that first hurdle. It all starts now, the road to Athens, the road to the trophy, and the road to Worlds. Let's kick off the LEC Summer Playoffs.
There's gonna be a lot of good series. There's a lot of kills, a lot of fights everywhere. The game is just so bloody right now.
Vitality eliminates SK Gaming from playoffs and from the regional qualifiers. Vitality make it to the postseason.
After we won, I just exploded with all the emotions that were in my body, and I just couldn't stop crying. I was criticized so much, and I was so glad that I showed up big time in the most important game of the split so far. I always say that the biggest driving motor is the fear. Maybe I didn't work enough, but it's on me, because I create the space to become a better player.
Tether here down towards the bottom side of the cross, all pop, and look at the damage coming out from it. 11 2v2. Mickey and Perks fall. Vitality.
I'm visualizing Worlds. It's in Europe ever since it's been announced. It's in finals in Paris. It's driving me nuts on this, and that pushes me forward.
Kimura does a lot of damage. He's dodging, but it doesn't matter. Huge shield, can he get an upset? Goes through, finds the kill, shut down.
What's unique about Europe right now is that even the bottom teams have like players that you have to like respect for their individual talent at least.
Look at the base, look at the base! Oh, just when you think it can't get wild. Papa, you wanted a fiesta, and Schalke are here for a party!
I was in the final last summer. I was close to winning the whole thing, so I'm really not content with just making 2 playoffs.
We made a rise to the top again, and I think we're a contender for pretty much everything.
And Origin re-engage the fight, but they are shuffled to pieces. Rogue find a perfect fight. And from last place in spring, Rogue continue to prove they belong in playoffs.
Towards the end now, I feel like we have finally found ourselves.
Prophet in a 4v1 is still surviving. He goes golden, buys enough time. It's a 4 versus 1. Prophet's not done. Rogue, that was a amazing!
How good am I? How good am I?
We're not scared to make moves and plays. Even if they don't work out, we don't give up, and I think that's our strength.
Everyone is gonna give it their all. Everyone wants to make Athens. We're just gonna play like we have nothing to lose.
A supreme display of talent there by the Splyce Electron.
The skill ceiling of this team is much higher than it was the previous year. We are willing to play even more aggressive than we did last year, and that's the big improvement.
Zercy's still there, the barrel comes out, and Zercy gets it! Once again, he steps up! He has had an impeccable split. Look at the damage coming out from them. The Elder Dragon, North Scammon on the back line. Zercy steals it, and Splyce take the game.
My goal for this split is to make it worse.
Just making playoffs doesn't really make me satisfied.
We are definitely not gonna take this for granted, and we are still in it.
Winning is my expectation. I got second place at Worlds last year, and that wasn't enough for me, so I decided to join G2 because I wanted to take it one step further. The expectations can never cloud my judgment. Now that it's playoffs and every game matters so much more, is when we're gonna really step it up. This is where champions are created.
We know that we can't get complacent because then it's very easy to lose.
I really just want to win Worlds honestly at this point, so that I can say in a couple of years that I started playing the game because I wanted to be the best at it. I played the game for 8 years, I became the best at it, and then I left a strong and solid legacy behind. That's honestly why I started playing the game. It wasn't because of money, it wasn't because of fame, it was just I wanted to be the best at League of Legends, and I feel like I haven't really reached that yet.
Teams battle to lift the LEC trophy in Athens. The Surprise of Summer Rogue are here for the first time, but they are up against Splyce, and they are experienced and have their eyes set rather on the prize. There are the Rogue boys as well. Vander leading the pack much as he does in game. Also, as the guys approach the studio, hello everyone. My name is Shox and I'm here with Ender and with Frosk. I just absolutely love that video because you get a glimpse into all the different motivations as to why people want to do well in playoffs and why they want to get to Worlds. It can be the upstart rookies. It can be a Reckless who's tried for so long. It can be a Fnatic wants a title back. All kinds of things, and that's what makes it so nice.
Yeah, everyone is ready for playoffs. Everyone is coming here with something on their shoulders, something they want to prove, and I'm just so excited to see it.
It's go time. Yeah, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I'm ready.
Let's go then. So let's see how last week finished. Last week of the regular season in summer, G2 and Fnatic made it to Athens, but the big fight was for the last playoff spots. It was all left to be decided as we went into that final week, and Origin didn't make the cut.
Yeah, it's a huge surprise here, going from second place in spring to now 8th place at the end of the season. Of course, it was this 4-team sprint for those last playoff spots, and it was actually Rogue last week that took out Origin and forced their way into top 5.
The thing is that no one expected Origin to even be in that sprint for the very last playoff. They thought that they were going to be contending for the top, that they would continue to be in that top 3, so everyone's going to be scratching their head for a very long time. What the hell happened to Origin?
And hopefully they can recover in time because they're playing the regional qualifier, the gauntlet, to make it to Worlds. Otherwise, you can't even start to describe what a disaster that would be for Origin, but let's look at the positive. Vitality sneaks in there. I say sneak, of course they deserve it, but they had to play a tiebreaker for it, and you don't want to be doing that at the end of your summer.
Right, because this team really started struggling week 8 and week 9 after looking like they were solidly going to get in here. They needed this tiebreak game against SK that they were able to win pretty convincingly, and now the question is, can they get back to the form that they were on the rise of? Can they shake off those last 2 weeks and come out big tomorrow?
It was a heartbreaker, but finally it feels like Vitality found their motivator in that emotional turmoil with the team. We know that they ride on emotion, that when they feel high, they play high, so let's see if they're still riding those wins.
We'll see. Tomorrow they're playing Schalke 04. Final team I want to touch on is Fnatic. They are ready for Athens. They locked a top 2 spot, and they had a very successful showing versus Splyce in the match of the week for that top 2 spot last week, and we saw some things that we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, I feel like Fnatic had a really good read on Splyce. Splyce like to download you, they dissect you, and then they they defeat you, and Fnatic just threw a wrench into all of that plan by pulling out a pick like the Urgot. Whippo stepped up. He caught Splyce off guard. They didn't know how to deal with this, and Fnatic rolled over when everyone was saying, tiny champion pool. Fnatic only play 5 champions. He said, hell no.
And in a game that was all about team fighting, it was Reckless too that stepped up in those fights. Usually he's on the back lines. This game, he was going in on the Kai'Sa, assassinating people like Humanoid, really stepping up at the right time.
Playoff buff activated, and over the next 3 weeks we'll of course decide our LEC Summer Champions and Europe's first seed at Worlds 2019. The playoff format changed coming into 2019. I think most of you are already familiar with it, but Frosk, what's the TLDR, the most important takeaway?
We have the coolest playoff format ever. I love this playoff format, and I was in the LPL, so I've seen multiple formats. It's basically a soft double elimination. If you're in the top 2, you call it the King's Match in our G2 for Fnatic. Loser of that isn't eliminated from playoffs. They will live to play again, whereas the winner is seeded directly into the finals.
Yeah, it's also super important. Our finals in Athens, it's not a third place match and a final. It is a seeding match to get into that final. So whoever wins the game between G2 and Fnatic automatically goes to the final. Loser plays the winner of the other series next week, and that'll be the day before the grand final in Athens.
Possible 2 best of 5s between Fnatic and G2, but the first time will be next Saturday, the 31st of August, the Kings match, because they got 1 and 2 respectively, and they'll going to Athens no matter what, and the loser will of course get a rematch to get to those finals. But when we look at the final form, G2 has always been the final boss, right? When we look at this year, but Fnatic, they're looking poised. So are we being hopeful that this could be a competitive run for them to the title possibly?
I mean, you hope so. You hope it's not another 6-0 Origin versus G2 fiasco, but we won't see. The good news is that theoretically, Fnatic might get 2 runs at this.
We'll see what happens. In any case, you can see Fnatic in G2 and 1/3 team in Athens. That will be on the 7th and the 8th of September. Get your tickets now for the summer finals rather at riot.com/Athens. We are all looking forward to that. But if you missed any of the games this split or weren't able to watch everything, how dare you? No, of course.
What are you doing?
So many games in so many regions. So of the 4 teams we'll see this first weekend in round 1, we wanted to give you a rundown of what to look out for. Starting with Rogue. Rogue first up, the underdogs of the playoffs, last place in spring. How did they make it here?
Well, they started by revamping this roster after a 10th place finish in spring, bringing in so much young blood from the regional leagues. You'll notice the only player on this screen that has played a playoff match in the LEC before is Vander. Otherwise, it's 4 people with no experience in postseason, and it is Vander in a lot of these games that's stepping up in the mid-game to make things happen.
The thing to really understand about Rogue is that if you make a mistake, they are a team that is good enough to punish you. Like he said, it's Vander getting to those plays. They love playing as 5v5 units. They're really good at team fighting. And so if Splyce aren't on their best form, Rogue can take a bite out of you.
We'll see. They are the underdogs, but they've proven people wrong before. The next team we want to look at is Schalke. They're back in playoffs, made it to the finals in summer of 2018, didn't make it to playoffs in spring, and they're back. And I can't put my finger on it, but they feel more well-rounded. They feel like an actual contender for the top spots.
Yeah, speaking of team fighting, I love Schalke's team fighting. I think collectively it helps when you have a guy like Upset, but this is the fundamental, basic League of Legends team. They play by the book, they play it very clean, they like to minimize risk, and it leads to a lot of consistency.
Yeah, and a lot of their playmaking comes from 2 very important players of the squad, Ignar and Trick. You'll notice, come mid-game, all of their plays are going to be collapsing on side lanes with this duo. This is a team that plays very well around pressure. When they have a numbers advantage, you can be almost guaranteed that they are going to attack you, and there's not going to be much you can do against it.
Yeah, there looks to be an evolution, though. When you say the correct League of Legends is the right team, sometimes that makes me think, oh, is it them boring or slow? But that isn't the case.
No, they're very much playing around monster objectives or objectives in general. They love 5v5s, and they'll play a lot of champions with level 6 ultimates. And as soon as you have that, you know that something's about to happen in the Schalke game. That they're always going to fight for Herald, they're always going to fight for Dragon, and they are always going to fight you for Baron.
Tomorrow they're fighting Vitality, who had a disappointing year so far. I mean, it's hard, you know. You're Vitality, you come in 2018, you have the rookies, you get to Worlds, you beat some of the best teams in the world, all the eyes are on them. But even with that expectation, I think we all expected them to be better so far.
If Schalke are all about consistency, Vitality are the polar opposite. They have no consistency, but they do have clutch factor. When push comes to shove, when this team has their backs against the wall, you have no idea what's going to come out of them. They love their base races, they love playing side lanes, and they love having these hero moments where guys like Cabochard and Jizuke can step up and do the impossible.
And they need Jizuke to step up. If this team wants to make a dent here in playoffs, Jizuke has to be the player you watch. You got champions that he loves to play that are getting buffed, like the Echo. I want him to return to some of these comfort picks like you see on the screen right now. When he feels at home, he looks like a fantastic player.
Yeah, and it does look like for most of this year, it's been completely up to if Mowgli has a fantastic early game, or if Jizuke has these games, it was all right. But they never really felt to me like they had that synergy that they had last year. Frost, can you said for me, last week in that tiebreaker, this was finally when they took that step forward.
Yeah, and it was finally when they started playing together as a team. You'll constantly look at the mini-map and you'll see that Jizuke is dashing forward, diving 2 towers, and Mowgli is literally in base. As soon as Vitality all get on the same page, where Jizuke is being backed up by his jungler, suddenly they look so much cleaner.
But it's still incredibly, incredibly volatile, so we'll see how they do tomorrow. But finally, not volatile, actually the anti-volatile team, Splyce. They are the favorites to make it to Athens. In my opening there, I talked about it, about all these words that surround them and all these prejudices and monikers of third place and bridesmaid and not good enough to be the absolute top 2. Are they in summer?
I mean, Splyce, they're definitely top 3. Their goal is to make it to Athens, is to try and make it to that final and break into the top 2. This is an organization that for a long time has been trying to ascend to the top of Europe here. And so far this split, they've been a very systematic team, taking you down one by one by one. Very strong play out of them. And in particular, I think Humanoid has been the huge X factor for them, completely transforming his play from spring to summer. He is now a huge carry force for this team.
I mean, the thing is that you face Splyce and you don't feel like you're being pressured in lane. So many times, teams will say that Kabe and Norskaren aren't really putting the heat on you. You know that Kabe can stand his ground in late game team fights, but it's Humanoid who will actually kill people in lane. And like you're saying, it's Humanoid that will create that X factor for Splyce, where they actually look explosive in an early game.
Extremely high expectations for Splyce and all the other teams in playoffs. And we've got some spice to work with. We've got a new patch. 9.16 is upon us. There were a decent amount of changes, and which ones jumped out to you going into our playoffs?
Well, first of all, I'd like to pull up some champions here. Notice there's a lot more champions that were changed on this patch. So we pulled the 5 biggest buffs in terms of win rate and high elo in solo queue, and the biggest nerfs in terms of decrease. And you already see the biggest winner was Nocturne. That dude shot up, and it's just pulling Vedius right up into Master Tier right now.
Okay. In reality, though, I do want to point out 2 key things. I want to point out the tanks, because Dr. Mundo, he's not on this, but I think that Dr. Mundo is potential to be played, as well as Shin got some buffs. So maybe if we see more even Gangplank lanes, yeah, he gets a free lane, but maybe there's something you could scale up for late game team fights. And then the bot lanes. Xayah Rakan should be king, especially with Sivir still being nerfed, as well as the Tahm Kench. But it's like Xayah Rakan and Kai'Sa Nautilus. And these are our big 2 bot lanes still in the meta.
I see Pantheon there, and I feel like it's kind of a tease because disabled for our playoffs.
No Pantheon for us, but I'll tell you something, so put a smile on your face. Yeah. Azir and Corki nerfs, get those guys out of here. I, for one, am very happy. Big base AD nerfs hits to Corki. I think his priority is going to go way down, and Azir was already sort of on the way out, lower priority in the past few weeks. He got a lighter nerf, but still enough to make his priority go way down in my mind.
I agree that the priority will go down, and ultimately what that means is that the mid-champion pool should open up, especially with Syndra also getting buffed up. It might mean that there's different blind picks, but we agree Assassins are probably still on the table. Things like Akali, very high priority.
So sounds good. Or are we going into a world where it's Akali only all the time? Or are we seeing bigger diversity in the types of mid lane champions you can play?
I think more diversity. We saw some buffs like Kassadin to try and make him counter out some AP melee mid laners. We saw Faker play both the Kassadin and the Echo earlier today. So I'm very hopeful for mid lane. I think in the jungle too, with Sejuani getting taken down a peg, we're going to see a lot more Gragas in our games. Kiana, some Sylas nerfs to jungle, but he'll still stay around.
It's so interesting because hopefully all these teams have done their homework, but they haven't played this on the competitive patch yet, unless this best of 5. What? Well, then we're gonna move on to our first best of 5 soon, and here's Ender to break down Splyce's summer so far.
Can he? Can he do that?
Thanks, Shocks. Now, Splyce's summer split got off to a bumpy start, but it's been a while.
Andy, read me a story.
It's way past your bedtime, Trev. What are you doing? Okay, fine. This is The Little Yellow Snake by Xerxes. Once upon a time, a little yellow snake dreamed of traveling far, far away to the city of Athens. No snake had left their home in quite some time, but this little yellow snake knew he was in his prime. He set off on his journey without any delay, only to get splatted on his very first day. No snake can take on a samurai, so he was told. You are far too shy, and that samurai is so bold.
The samurai's mean.
Up ahead, the little snake saw some bees, so he found a friend in a spider queen who helped him beat those bees with ease. Still, the little yellow snake was not yet content, for he had to stay behind while to NA others went. From his home he watched, sad and lonely. If only he had the chance to prove himself. If only, if only. The little yellow snake was no longer the underdog. He made friends with Kiana, and she helped him get his first Kia Pog. Now, please disregard the top of this page. I know it looks wrong, but don't be outraged. Our artist got bored, his game was too free, max stacks on his mesh eyes, and a killing spree. I take this time to flame his poor spelling, but please don't forget, he still was excelling.
Carry on.
The little snake's journey was coming to a close. Sadly, no snake can buy boots, for they lack 10 toes.
Yeah, I got toes. Look, over here.
That's great, son. That's great. While these foes were easy, next week would not be, for up ahead was the big bad FNC.
Bum, bum.
For 42 minutes, the snake fought to his limits. He tried all he could, but it wasn't enough. The little snake was good, but the big bad FNC was too tough.
Oh no!
But the little yellow snake's fight is not fully spent, for he has just begun his final ascent. This is the last page, but don't you lament. Come playoff time, Splyce will not relent. There, there.
Trevor's taking a nap. No, thank you so much for that, Ender. Nice to put a highlight on the drawings that Xerxes does every week on his Twitter. We'll see what he'll draw after the playoffs, but first I want to welcome my guests here. Kadrol, jungler for Excel, and Hussein Mousvi, head coach for Misfits. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Nice introduction, wasn't it, the story?
That was a good one. It was something.
Peak LEC content. Well, Splyce is a peak LEC team. In general, we've talked a lot about Splyce already, but can I get some high-level thoughts from you guys about how strong you think they're going to be in these playoffs?
Well, I think you can think of Splyce as like a better version of Rogue, because I think they play the game exactly the same almost. They have the exact same priorities, and I think that they're both kind of late-game teams. I think the only difference you'll see is the jungle mid mismatch is quite big. I think Humanoid's a lot more of like a pop-off assassin aggressive player, whereas Larsen's more of that control mage safe carry. And then Xerxes is more of like a safe jungler. He's going to be very steady and even in farm, and I think Inspired might look for plays early.
And I think a lot of the criticisms for Rogue might come from because a lot of their strengths are, or rather the weaknesses are basically what Splyce was criticized for in the past. They're a very reactionary team, and Splyce has gotten so much better at that. It's really an uphill battle for Rogue this time around to try to.
Yeah, and they are underdogs, and I think there's no shame in that. If you look at the organization coming in to the split and in spring, ending in last place, then making the necessary changes with the members from their Ultra Liga roster. It is the first time the org is in the LCS playoffs. And what is your goal then? If you're some of the rookies with the experienced players, of course you're going to say we want to get as far as possible. But where do you think their ceiling lies in these playoffs specifically?
So I think Splyce is heavy favorites for this one, and therefore, like, if you're Rogue over here, you're looking to prove that as rookies, you want to perform to your expectations on the big stage when it matters. They have someone like Vander who's there to lead the charge and like really help them out for that. But it's really on the rookies to step up and perform at their level on the big stage.
How? What can you say to them to make it click? Because we've seen them beat Origin last week, and that was arguably one of the most high-stress situations they could have been put in. They also already managed to beat Schalke, so there is potential there.
There's definitely potential. I think Splyce went 0-2 last weekend as well, so you can definitely watch those games back, look for ways you can exploit the draft or the game. But I think the main thing for me is Vander. Like, when you see this guy playing Alistar or Nautilus, he's always jumping in the team fights, and even in fights like these where Vander's not really around, the team of rookies is not scared to just go for a 4v5, go for a 4v4, and just try to pop off.
Yeah, it maybe isn't, there's not that much system to it yet, or that much exact planning that you can see in the games, but it does seem that the will is there to start the fights, and they're not afraid to make them.
Yeah, initially, like that's I think the main thing. Coming into game one, how does Rogue actually play? Are they aggressive? Are they in Splyce's faces? Are they looking to create fights for themselves? And then how much of that is reliant on Vander? Are they relying on their big experienced carry, or sorry, support, like an enabler essentially, to make those plays for them, or will the other four step up and do it as well?
One of the news guys on stage is Finn, and let's see what he has to say before his first LEC playoffs appearance.
Thank you very much, Shax. Finn, you're coming in today as the real underdogs of this LEC summer playoffs. So do you think it gives you guys an edge over Splyce, and why?
I think it's very nice to have this aura of the underdog because I mean we're very young players, so the feeling of being able to play without like any regrets and nothing to lose is just really nice to have, and it kind of puts off all pressure on us.
Do you have any expectations coming in today?
Today we go in with zero expectations. We just go in and we're gonna play our game.
Free as birds. That's the right spirit, I guess.
Yeah.
You will be playing your very first best of 5 on stage, and we know how different it is to prep for a best of 1 versus a best of 5. So can you tell me about the prep you went through this week to be ready today?
I mean, we've done a lot of research on all their players and like how they want to play the game, and also what kind of champions they prefer to pick in the different situations. So I think we're pretty prepared to anything they might show on us, unless they have something really scary prepared, in which we have a very nice way of responding to it as well.
Awesome. It's nice to have a response, but in game 1 they will be playing red side as they had side selections, so you won't have an ability to counter pick. So can you give me some specifics on game 1?
Game 1? I mean, game 1 we're gonna go in with kind of an idea, and then for the rest of the games we're gonna try to adapt, like depending on how the game went. But for the game 1 we have a specific plan in mind we want to try, and we're just going to see how it pans out for the rest of the games.
All right, well, thank you very much for these insights, and good luck on your very first series. Now back to you, Shox.
Thank you very much, Laura. Always nice to hear from Finn. We also want to hear from all the LEC fans at home. Who will win our first playoff series? You can vote in the chat. Spam now, RGE for Rogue or SPY for Splyce. I just want to jump in there for that interview. Do you both agree that that's the best plan? They're basically already saying, it sounds to me like, oh, we've got a plan, so we've got a special pick or a special strategy. Is that the best way to go?
Yeah, I definitely think it is. I mean, they've definitely researched the last couple of weeks of games for sure. They've seen some tendencies that Splyce have. I think they have a few small champion pools in certain roles, and they did go 0-2 last week, right?
Doesn't it sound like throwing the towel in before? What would be, I'd love to hear from maybe Moose as well, but wouldn't you start with kind of the standard and what, if you played your best at that, see if you can win? Or
I assume that they have like one specific draft, or some variation of that draft that they want to start game 1 off with, and I think they're hoping that that either shows weaknesses in Splyce's prep, or at the least that it shows that there's like adaptations that can be made so that they can beat Splyce. So like, I think it's fine. I think they're coming in with something that they're comfortable with, that they think can take a game off Splyce initially, and it's fine.
Yeah, also with the new patch now, maybe they have something prepared. Fans at home are voting. Rogue is winning in the fan vote for now. I do know that in the predictions, all 3 of us said Splyce would win 3-0, 3-0, and 3-1, as far as I know. And let's dive a little bit deeper into the specifics of this matchup as we see this counting on, because we touched on it already. In terms of playstyles, they are going to win the fan vote. It is a bit delayed normally, but they still seem to be edging out Rogue. In terms of playstyles, it's a hard one for Rogue since they play much in the same way as Splyce, just don't do it as well. Could you give some specifics as to how that plays out?
Yeah, so you can see from these numbers here, I think both junglers aren't really looking for plays early. They look to farm, they look for these opportunities which are more guaranteed rather than these risky plays. And you'll see them, probably most of the fights will come around neutral objectives. I don't think much junglers will look for ganks unless it's like a Jarvan level 2 gank or a Xinza level 2 gank. I think something like that will be how the game plays out.
And I think the other thing is that Splyce feels like they have like at least 3 people that are always willing to make plays at any given point and are reliable in that. Rogue has Vander, who's incredibly reliable, and you can see that in his picks. But the other one is Finn, especially on picks like Kled. And outside of those 2, the other 3, it's really on the other 3 to like step it up really, and also look for the same level plays. Because if Rogue is only relying on 2 people and Finn on very specific champions to do that, then they'll always struggle to find fights.
Yeah, Finn is kind of the X factor there as well. I think Humanoid is definitely an X factor. On Splyce, a couple of other individuals I want to put the spotlight on. Kobbe, he's always there. He's a franchise man. He's also the guy who we're always looking at in terms of kind of leading those late game surges from Splyce. How good is the Kobbe of summer 2019?
I think this is the best that he's ever been.
Okay.
It also helps that he has a really strong carry from mid lane now, so there's so much space being created in fights by both the carries that they're complementing each other really well. So Kobbe's looking exceptional right now. I think easily top 280 carry, and Humanoid's, right there with him.
Fantastic. They seem to be ready for playoffs. Final thing I want to mention is as we get into this first game, the early game and just the jungle in general is going to be so important. Cadril, how do you think Inspired is going to do versus Xerxes?
Well, I think he's going to do pretty fine in the early game. I think both junglers have a very similar jungle champ pool. I think we'll be seeing lots of Gragas, Skarner. I think the Olaf will probably be banned away from Inspired. I think Olaf's the only champ where he's looked to be really strong in the early game. But I think that both junglers will be pretty even towards the early mid game. It just depends who sets up the objectives best and plays around the lane priorities.
We've heard it already, maybe a special strategy from Rogue. Who is going to be their X factor? Is it Vander who can do it for them if they manage to take some games?
could be Vander on his Alistar, on his Nautilus. We've seen some great engages from him against Origin last weekend. I think it could also be Finn, like Hussein said. I think he's got his Kled pocket pick, which is something that Splyce should expect, but it's hard to play against.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, though. Even though there's no pressure on Splyce, I think the last thing they want to do is fall at this first hurdle. That would just be awful for them. So they also have everything left to play for. We are ready to start the LEC 2019 Summer Playoffs with Splyce versus Rogue. Let's hit the riff.
Thank you, Shocks. Hello, fellow Summoners. I'm Dracos, joined by the wonderful Frost as we get ready for the first game in what I'm sure will be a compelling best-of-5 series. I cannot wait to see these two teams go toe-to-toe. But if you saw the prediction graphic on Twitter, you may have already ascertained that it does appear to be a bit of a Splyce-favored matchup. But that said, the fan vote still very much on the side of Rogue.
Yeah, the Rogue fans coming in pretty strong today, but that's the thing. It feels like the expectations are very different for these teams. A lot of people didn't expect Rogue to even be to this point, so it's about defying those expectations, seeing how strong they can be.